Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to be making my new junk journal with you guys from start to finish. I'm really proud of this one. I love the way that it turned out and I thought I would take you along on the journey of making it. And this is the first time I've done like a themed one for myself. I've made a lot of themed ones like as custom orders and for my shop, but for myself I haven't really done that. But I really fell in love with these papers, this Magic Forest collection from Stamperia, and had to just do something with it and create something. So I'm going to go through those papers with you first. You can kind of see the sort of theme I'm going for, and then we will start making the journal. Okay, let's get making. So usually when I make journals, especially my own, I like to find an old book cover where, I've gutted the insides and then I have the cover lying around. But none of the ones I had were really speaking to me, so I thought I would just make my own. And I'm going to make it out of an Amazon envelope and a kitchen roll tube. First, I opened up that Amazon envelope and I'm going to measure out my panels that I need. I'm going to use 2 layers of this just to make it a little bit sturdier. You can, of course, use chipboard, and I do often use that, but it was in a hard to get to place and I had these Amazon things just lying around, so I thought I might as well use them. The panels I'm making measure 8 by about 5 3/4 inches. I would have gone a little taller, but that was the height of the kitchen roll tube, which I'm going to use for the spine, so I couldn't really go any taller than that. So as you see, I measured them out in a way that I could just fold 2 layers together like that, so you've got like a really sturdy bit on the bottom as well that's not going to start peeling apart, and then just going to glue those 2 panels together as well. That glue I am using is a high-tack tacky glue. I don't know if it's a particular brand or anything. Hang on. Oh, it just says original high-tack, all-purpose, very sticky glue. But I think most glues are going to be fine in this sort of situation. Then I'm going to use masking tape or painter's tape to sort of just tape around those edges, because I'm of the opinion that I don't care what glue you're using. I don't care if it's the stickiest glue in the whole entire world. When you've glued 2 things together like that, they are going to start peeling at the edges. They will. It's just like inevitability. So that's why I'm covering with the masking tape like that, and also scoring it down to make sure it stays in place. Then I'm going to work on my spine, just cutting the kitchen roll in half, doing as straight a line as I can before measuring it and figuring out the sizes for everything. So you want to add 2 scores on the edge of these to make a curved spine. I am doing mine at, I think 3/4 inch measurements, and that leaves me with a 3-inch spine to use. You may think that math isn't mathing, but it does. You'll see basically you lose one of those 3/4 inches because it gets folded over in on itself. Now, some time ago, I did do a how to do a curved spine cover tutorial, so I'm going to link that because I think I explained it better in that one. But you can see where I have folded those edges kind of in like a little zigzag way, and this is the way you glue it on. So you have one of those folds on one side of the panel, one of those folds glued on the other side, and then I always clip them in place because the kitchen roll tube is quite bendy, it doesn't want to stay there, so it needs a little bit of encouragement to stay there. So I will show you again how that is glued into place. It basically means that you have one fold stuck on the back part of the panel and one fold stuck on the front, and it gives the curved spine a smoother transition onto the panels, basically, because if you just did the one fold you would get an awkward gap. It's kind of hard to explain that without a visual reference, but I don't know, maybe you'll get what I mean. Leave that to dry for quite a while, at least a few hours, if not overnight. While waiting for it to dry, I worked on all my papers for my signatures, so I cut all of those ready to go. I can't remember offhand how many papers I actually did, but I went through my stash and obviously found all these sort of ones that I sort of thought matched the theme, some of my own handmade paper there, and then I also downloaded from Ink and Page on Etsy a collection called, I think it's called Fairy Forest, maybe, and then printed that out. I thought that would work really, really nicely. I have cut my papers to about just short of 8 inches tall by about 10 inches wide, and yeah, as you see, I'm going to go through all of those, and then I spend a while deciding, you know, what's going to go into each signature, how many of these pattern papers are going in, how many of these book pages, how many of the more plainer ones, because I do like to use some plainer pages as well, like ledger paper, parchment paper, handmade paper, even just like plain A4 printer paper sometimes. I'm not of the opinion that like when you're doing a theme journal that every single page has to be themed. Oh, there, if you're wondering, because I'm using an old book page, sometimes they are not very, they're a bit worn basically in the middle, so I just put some washi tape over to make it a bit more secure when it comes to binding the signatures. For this journal, I decided to create 4 signatures. They're about 15-ish pages each, or papers, obviously then folded, you get 30 and then 60 sides. Some of you might be thinking only 4 signatures for a 3-inch spine, like that's not very many, but my controversial opinion, apparently it's controversial, I don't know, when I make journals, I don't make them chunky, because I'm of the belief that you make them chunky from the creativity that you do on the pages. So when I first make them, they're not gaping, because as soon as you start to fill them with your writing and pictures and stickers and ephemera and all of those things, that's when they start to gape. So I think if you make or buy a journal that's already really, really chunky, there's barely any room to create in it. So, but I posted about this once on Instagram and people either disagreed or didn't understand what I mean. I wasn't saying that I don't like chunky journals. I love a chunky journal when I'm finished with it. I don't want to start out chunky because then it's just a pain to work in. But apparently there was some drama on TikTok about this recently. I don't know. I don't get involved in journal drama, but sometimes I see it passing by and take a slight interest. Anyway, I actually spend quite a lot of time arranging the signatures in the journals that I make, you know, making sure there's like a good mix of plains and patterned ones, and like where I've added a vellum, does it look really nice to the pages next to it? And do you know what I mean? Like I really, really think hard about it. So it does tend to take me quite a while. You see there, I've changed my mind and decided to fold that the other way, so you get like the pretty wood logs paper next to the fairies, and you know, so on. I just like to make things work really, really nicely. I don't just whap them in and see what happens. I really think about it. I'm not saying you should do this, do whatever you want, but this is the way I like to do it. Plus, it's the part of journal making that I enjoy more than the more like physical stuff, as in making the cover. This is more of one of my more favorite things to do. And any second now, my cat Conan will come along to help me and come and tell me that it's far too late for me to be at my desk. It was quite late at night when I was doing this, and that it's time to go to bed. So that meant that my panels did get overnight to dry as well. So we will go back to the panels in a second. I'm just finishing off, I think, probably the last signature here. Again, checking, making sure everything looks really, really nice when you look at it together. That page looks nice next to that page, and so on. Here he is, Mr. Fluffy Butt, getting in my way as per usual. So it is now the following day. The glue has had overnight to dry and everything is nice and secure in place, and you can kind of see it does sort of fold in on itself, so you just have to sort of stretch it out a bit. But now you can see the base of the journal is really taking shape. So I like to cover my curved spines with fabric, so I chose this lovely emerald green fabric. I think this is actually the opposite side of it. It is kind of slightly satiny, shiny, and cut a nice decent sized piece to cover the spine both front and back. But then I also am going to cover the panels with some cardstock. This might be, you may see this as an unnecessary step. I just think it gives a nicer surface, makes it more secure. I'm gonna paint these as well, so it's a nicer surface to paint on. I am doing this in the laziest possible way though. I am not measuring anything at all. I'm taking an A3 piece of cardstock, as you see, glued it on one side of the panel, and then I'm just gonna fold it around the other side of the panel using a bone folder to make sure all the corners are nice and smooth and everything. But yes, this, as I said, is the lazy girl's guide, or well, I shouldn't say girl, lazy person's guide to, yeah, covering a panel with cardstock, because it's so much easier than measuring, and it actually makes no difference in the long run. Little tip for you here: if you are using glue that has like a nozzle on it, which I'm using here, or instead of one that comes out of a pot, if you know what I mean, I use this. Well, this is actually a silicone brush that's for putting face masks on your face, but you know, something like that to spread out the glue, because if you just let like that line dry as it is, then you will actually be able to see the line through the cardstock. There will be a slight raised bump, so that's why I spread the glue out like that. In this case, it probably wouldn't have mattered that much because it will all get covered up, but I still think it looks better in the long run, and it's a good habit to get into because they do not look nice when you can see that glue line underneath the paper or cardstock. Then when those cardstock covers are in place, I'm not bothering to wait for those to dry, but I am going over all the edges with a bone folder just to, as I said, make sure they're all nice and smooth and rounded. And then I'm going to cover everything in a layer of black gesso, because I feel like black gesso is going to work the best for the sort of colour theme I am going for with this journal. So all over the front, the back, and most importantly, the edges is the most important part to cover as well. So, oh, Conan's literally just jumped on my desk as I'm doing. Do you mind? Probably heard me talking about him a minute ago. He's right here in front of the computer. You may be able to hear him purring. I do not know. But what was I talking about? Black gesso. Oh, I'm being poured. I think I said everything I need to say. Cover the edges is more important than anything. I will be putting paper sounds wrong, but the middles will be covered, so they're not as important. Next, I add the fabric to the spine. I am using heavy gel medium for this, which, to be honest, is probably overkill on my part. I really want to make sure that it stays there in place. So as you can see, I glue the middle section all over and then press down the spine into it, like really, really press it down, then place something heavy on it so it stays in place before I glue the top and bottom parts and then fold them over. You may notice that the fabric is a lot wider than the spine is. That's mostly a personal preference for me, but also for practical reasons. It means that there's just like a little bit of extra material to keep it like more secure. And then when I put my decorative panels on the front and back covers and on the inside as well, that means they are going to help keep that down as well, because they partly go over that really wide piece of material. I also take my bone folder and then really score in those grooves to make sure everything stays in place. Obviously, when you sew the signatures in as well, that's going to help the material stay in place. I really want to make sure it's not going to go anywhere at all. It is looking a bit weird now because you can see like the glue coming through and like little wet patches. You will not be able to see that when it's dry. And because I spread the glue over with my little silicone thing as well, any sort of palette knife type thing will work. There's no like 3D element to it. There's no like glue bits sticking up making it, you know, lumps in the material, if you like. Then I'm going to start working on the panels that will go on the front and inside covers. Obviously, I've taken these from those Stamperia papers. I've cut them, I can't remember the size off the top of my head, slightly under 8 by 5.5 Maybe, obviously, if you're making a journal, you measure it yourself. You're not going to do them to exactly the same specifications as mine. So 4 of those, and then I spent some time deciding which ones would go on the outside and which on the inside. And I decided these ones with the trees and the lovely border at the bottom would be my front covers, because they're going to get more things put on top of them, whereas the ones inside, even though they have more decoration on, so to speak, won't have as many things put on. So it actually kind of makes more sense to put the prettier ones on the inside, because you'll see more of those, unless you're not going to add loads of stuff to them, in which case do whatever you want. So I kind of figured out the layout of what I wanted to do on each one using the chipboard pieces, and then I'm going to go in and just do some basic stenciling and things in the background to add a little bit of something else. That stencil is with the old Gothic writing on, is from Prima by Finnever. I can't remember what it's called. I've had it a long time, and I'm using a brush to stencil on some just black archival ink. Archival ink. I was going to go with one of the tealy colours, but the black actually worked best for the stenciling. But I'm also going to bring in this teal colour just around the edges as well. I did want to bring in some of it because it's such a pretty colour and it goes really, really nicely with everything. I probably should have said at the beginning of this video that a chunk of it will be devoted to sort of making slightly mixed media covers, but oh well, here we are now. Distressing the edges of those front panels with a distress tool, and then I'm going to go in and add some gilding flakes to these. I use a Nuvo glue pen for using gilding flakes. It's the best thing that I've found for it, but you can use all sorts of different things. This is just, as I said, the best thing I've found. Gilding flakes, I have such a love-hate relationship with these things. Like, I love the way they look, but I hate working with them because you end up with tiny little glittery pieces of gold everywhere after you've done it. I think that the trick is to not breathe when you're working with them. Yeah, just stop breathing and then they won't go everywhere. And that's about it. I use a dry brush to put them on, make sure the glue has gone nice and tacky, and then brush those beautiful foily flakes on so you get that rough gold edge, which I find really, really pretty. I will then use gel medium to attach all of my different things. I do have one piece, that little quote I've put on the back panel, which is from the paper pack, which had a few little bits of more ephemera, that's not a word, cut out bits and tags and things like that, and these little sayings, so I have included some of those. And I think everything else is the chipboard. They're called the die cuts, but they are a chipboard, so I didn't realise that when I bought them. I thought they would be like classic cardstock ephemera die cuts, but no, they're chipboards. So just in case, I'm sure everyone knew that and it was just me being dumb, but there we go. I also took a gold marker, permanent marker pen, to just go around the edges of these chipboard pieces, adding some more gold, pretty bits all around. And then I also think I lost some footage of me working on the inside panels, so whoops for that. When I've added those gold little marker highlights, I'm also going to add gold splatters because I had to on this. I had to add gold splatters to this, obviously. One of my favourite things to use for gold splatters is Winsor & Newton drawing ink. You do have to shake it up quite a lot to get it splits when you leave it for a while, but it makes the most beautiful effect. And I also painted some of that on where I had used the gilding flakes. There was a couple of patches I wasn't happy with, so I've painted those little blank areas as well. So as I mentioned, I did lose that footage of me working on the inside panels, but all I did was do the stenciling on those. I don't think I did anything else to those at all, and then glued them on using the same method I do for everything else in this video. I did use the gel medium, the standard one, not the heavy one, spread it with my silicone tool and make sure they were really stuck down at the edges, so hopefully they don't peel up too much over time. Here I am marking my holes for adding the signatures. When I've got a dark base like this, I like to use a white gel pen because then you can really see the holes where to make the holes. Measuring obviously depends on the size of what you're working with. I do it by working out the exact middle points and going from there. I think I did this obviously directly in the middle and then maybe 4.5 centimeter gaps between. And I'm very sorry, I know I switch between inches and centimetres. It's what we Brits do. We switch between imperial metric at a whim. To put those holes in the spine ready for sewing in the signatures, I use a Tim Holtz pokey tool, but any kind of awl will do. And then I have a large piece of foam underneath so I don't make holes in my desk as well. And also I really try and like work those holes, like really push it through and wiggle it around a bit to make sure they're nice and big for the needle to go in and out of. Then I'm going to finalize my signatures, just going through them again. I had some extra pages that I wanted to include, and then I also have that pile there on the right, which is all the little bits and pieces I'm going to use to sew in pockets, tuck-ins, flip out things, all of that sort of thing. As I mentioned, I sew them all in my sewing machine. I did not film that because the lighting is terrible where my sewing machine is, and honestly it's probably quite boring just to watch me stitching things all over and over again, but you'll see all the pockets and things when I flip through the journal at the end. Here I am adding the holes to the signatures. I get asked every time I share this on video what this thing is. It is called a book binding cradle. I cannot give you a link from where I got mine because they do not sell it anymore, but just do a search, book binding cradle, and if you're interested you can find one. I will point out as well, for some reason it didn't get filmed or I lost the footage, but I do measure out where I'm punching or poking the holes. I'm not just doing it at, by eyesight. I did measure them out as well. So for stitching in, it is the standard journal saddle stitch. I'm not going to explain it because I feel like everyone has explained it by this point. You go in, you go out, you do a figure of 8. There you go. When I'm doing a large journal like this, I clip the signature to the outside of the journal, to the boards, just to keep it in place and stop the pages flapping around at me while I'm trying to sew them in. And then, yeah, then I do my knot in the middle. I like to loop the knot, what's it called? The thread, there we go, around itself, like under the signature, the saddle stitch a few times, just to make it extra secure. If you're wondering what I'm using, it is is it 1 or 2 millimeter waxed thread. It's like official bookbinding thread. Oh, and then I realised I needed to add an eyelet into the journal for adding charms and things, and it's better to add that before adding the signatures, but thankfully I remembered before I had sewn them all in, so there we go. I don't always add charms and things to my journals, but I do think they look nice on hardback journals, but I personally won't add them until I'm finished with working in the journal, because otherwise they're just, getting in my way the whole time. So I add charms right at the very end, but having the eyelet there ready is probably a good idea. So just carrying on with sewing in my signatures here. As you can probably see, every time I add a new one, I put the needle through the center hole first, then I clip the side of the signature in place. So again, as I said, it's not flapping around and annoying me. And then I go for it, really. Except for the last one, I do always do the signatures back to front. I don't know why. It wouldn't really matter which way you did it, but that's the way I do it. But for the last one, I clip it to the other side of the journal as well. I find that's the easiest way of doing things. So once all of those are sewn in, obviously it takes a lot longer in real life, but I sped it up for you because it's not the most interesting to watch and cut quite a few bits out. I'm going to add the finishing touches to the journal. I like to do this once the signatures are in because some of the things I'm going to put on are, I don't know, a little bit delicate and it's quite rough on the cover when you're sewing the signatures in. So these last little bits, as I said, I find it's better to do them at the very last thing you do. So I am taking some gold wax and dry brushing that on all those like black edges and also on the material spine, because I think it looks pretty, to be honest, and I really wanted those gold edges around the journal. I thought that would look super, super pretty. And then I take scrap A4 paper and place that between the signatures and the cover to not get any of the gold or any of the paint or glue or anything I'm using in these final stages on those signatures. I will say I particularly love the lightly dry brushed wax on the fabric spine and putting it over like the thread of the signatures as well. I think gives it a lovely aged quality, and it was just an idea that came to me at the time. I didn't pre-plan it whatsoever, but I was really pleased with that thing in particular. I said it's lovely aged kind of look, so I did it a little bit on the inside as well. And then the very last thing I did was to add some glass cabochons to the front cover. thought they really helped with the sort of magical, ethereal quality I was kind of going for with this journal. Stuck those on with 3D gloss gel because, you know, you can't see once it's dried. It doesn't look like anything's there at all. And yeah, I just thought they looked really, really pretty and really worked on this journal. And they're there. That is the last thing I do to make it. So let's have a little look at it, shall we? I will do a full flip through so you can see. But yeah, I'm really proud of this one. I should have counted how many pages there are to tell you, but you get a rough idea. But wait, I have something else to show you. Dun, dun, dun. I made another one. Surprise! I liked making this one so much and I was so proud of it that I was like, you know what? I'm going to make another one for my Etsy shop. So yeah, there it is. I will flip through that one last, but I'm just giving you an initial show and go over of that one first before I flip through my one. But yes, this one will be for sale in my Etsy shop. I will try and make sure it's listed at the same time that this journal video goes live, but yeah, I'll talk about it in a minute. First, let's flip through my own personal journal. Yeah, okay then, let's talk about journal number 2. So, as I said, I just enjoyed making the first one so much and I love the theme so much that I couldn't resist to make another one. The main differences with this one is it is slightly bigger. You might be able to see I also did some white stenciling on the front and back panels. I think that just looked really, really pretty. I also added gold splatters to the spine, which I also think look very pretty, and there's more gold wax in the center under the signatures, but you can see it a little bit as well. The other main difference is that in the journals that I sell, I add a lot more pockets and more interactive elements too. So more pockets, more tuck spots, more, you know, things like that. And obviously they're all filled as well with stickers and ephemera and lovely things. A lot of it's very similar. There were a few things I couldn't use in this one because of like copyright issues. Like there was a couple of papers I used in mine which I do not have rights to use in my shop, so I couldn't use those in this one. But other than that, it's, yeah, it's pretty similar, but it is, as I said, slightly bigger. It might have more pages. It probably does. It feels chunkier to me than the other one, but it is still, you know, yeah, pretty much the same. But I do really like this one. You know, I was kind of looking at it, oh, maybe I'll keep this one, but no, it's fine. I think I just really like the front cover on this one in particular, like the door and the little cabochons. I don't know, it just, I found this one more fun to work with, maybe. I don't know. I will read out, I did write it here. I just realised I've had my fan on this whole time and you can hear it. I'm so sorry. This one has 113 pages or 226 pages, depending on how you count them. And it's got 30 pockets or tuck spots, and there's something in every single tuck spot or pocket. In one, there's like an envelope full of stickers as well. So all sorts of things. There's some belly bands in there as well, I think. So yeah, very, very filled journal, this one. But still not too chunky. You can still absolutely work in it. Again, my rant earlier about chunky journals. Anyway, so as I flip through the rest of this journal, that is going to be the end of this video. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you're interested, this journal will be up on my Etsy store. As I mentioned, extra information about pages and how stuff like that will be in the description. So I'll also do flip throughs on TikTok as well if you wanted a shorter video to look through them. But yeah, I think that's going to do it from me. Let me know if you have any questions or anything. Relevant links to some of the products that I can link will be in the description box. Apologies for the chunk of this video that had the fan on in the background. It's hot and I forgot that it was on, and I'm sorry, but I can't be bothered to go and redo the voiceover. So yes, sorry. Please leave me a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Chat to me down in the comments and subscribe if you haven't already. You know, do all the YouTubey things that YouTubers always ask you to do. And yeah, I think that's going to be it. Thank you so much again. I am now going. Bye bye.